Hey guys, welcome to the 17th C programming tutorial, and in this tutorial we're going to continue looking at arrays. So let's just go ahead right here and run through a quick example. Let's say that we wanted to make a program that would ask the user for 5 floats. Then it would store those floats inside of a float array. Well, the only way that we know how to make a float array is by doing this. We'd have to say float my floats, and then we have to put 2 square brackets after the name of our variable to signify that it's going to be an array. Then we'd have to set it equal to a set of numbers. So we'd have to put 2 curly braces, and then inside of here just list all the numbers that we wanted to store inside of our float array. And since we were going to change the value of these numbers at runtime, we could just go ahead and set these all equal to 0. So we'd have to say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, since we're going to ask the user for 5 numbers. And this is by far the worst way to do it. There's a much better way to do it than this. So let me just go ahead and show you the alternative way of creating an array. Just go ahead and delete all this and put a semicolon after these 2 square brackets right here. Then inside of these 2 square brackets, just put the number of elements that you want to have inside of your array. So we're going to be asking the user for 5 floats, so we can just put the number 5 right inside of here. So now there are 5 spaces inside of our float array called myFloats to store floats. So now let's just go ahead right here and write a for loop that will continually ask the user for 5 floats. So we're just going to say for int I equals 0 while I is less than 5, since we're asking the user for 5 variables. Then we're just going to go ahead and increment I at the end. Alright, so now all we want it to do is just ask the user for a float. So we're going to say please enter a float. Then we're just going to go ahead and read that float into our float array called myFloats right here. So we're going to say scanf, and then we're going to do modulus f since we're reading a float, and then we're going to go ahead right here and do ampersand because we're reading, and then we just need to say myFloats. And then inside of square brackets right here, we're just going to put the index that we're going to be storing the number that the user enters in. So we're just going to go ahead and put I, and then go ahead and end this line with a semicolon. So basically what it's going to do right here is just go through this for loop. So it's going to say int I equals 0, so I is now equal to 0. Is 0 less than 5? Yes, it is. So it's just going to go ahead and ask the user for a float. Then what it's going to do right here is store the float that the user enters at the index of 0. Then it's going to go back up to the top, increment I by 1. I is now equal to 1. Is 1 less than 5? Yes, it is. Enter another float. Then it's going to store this float that the user enters at the index of 1, and it's just going to keep doing that and doing that until the array is filled. Alright, so now we've basically just written the code to fill our array with numbers that the user enters. Now all we're going to do is print those numbers back to the user to higher. So we're just going to add 2 to every float inside of our float array and then print them back to the user. So now we need to loop through all of the elements again. So let's just go ahead right here and write another for loop. So we're going to say for int I equals 0, I is less than 5 since there are 5 elements inside of our float array. And then we just need to increment I each time so that we're going through every element. And then all we're going to do right here is just print out every single element inside of our float array and add 2 to it. So we're just going to say print f, and we're printing out a float, so we need to say f, and then we're just going to go ahead and end the line so that each float that we print out is on a different line. And then we're just going to say my floats at the index of I plus 2. So basically what this is just going to do right here is just print out every single element inside of our float array and add 2 to it. So let's say at the index of 0, the user entered 3.5. Well, on the first loop through right here, it's just going to say my float at the index of 0, so the user entered 3.5 the first time. So it's just going to say 3.5 plus 2 is 5.5, and then just go ahead and print that out onto the screen. Alright, so now let's just go ahead and run this and make sure that it works. So it says please enter a float. I'll enter 3.5, and then I'll just enter 5, 6, 7, 8. And as you can see right there, it just added 2 to every single float that we entered. So first we entered 3.5 right there, it added 2 to it, and we got 5.5. We entered 5, it added 2 to it, we got 7, 6 became 8, 7 became 9, 8 became 10. Alright, so that's pretty much it for this tutorial, so see you guys.